So that's why I use prayer to do that. Anytime that I'm in prayer, that really is a pause moment because I'm kind of pausing out of life, right? I'm taking a break for a few minutes out of life, talking about on this earthly life to communicate with my Father, right? And so I'm like, okay, Papa, what are we going to do? Help me out with this. And when I do that, I remove myself. So one of the things that I have to realize is when we pause, we also do that in prayer, believe it or not, because that's when we now listen. And isn't that what meditation is? So here's the thing. Slow to speak is really what pause is, right? It's just slow to speak. I don't react as quick as I used to. And really that means three things in life. First thing is means shut up. Then listen. And then process what's actually been said. You see, a lot of times we don't actually hear what's been said. We hear what we think's been said. You know what's interesting is that I've been in relationships where it's like I can't finish my sentence. Anybody else been there? It's like you just get cut off. Or how about this one? This is a little worse. How many times have you done that? Somebody starts to say something to you and all of a sudden it's like you just cut them off. Why? Because you see, we're afraid of what they may say, right? So we automatically go into what? Into this defensive mode, man. It's like, okay, I know you're going to say something bad, so I'm going to cut you off before you say it, right? I know what you're going to say. Well, so one of the things that I do is a lot of times, because I have someone in my life who does that to me a lot, and so I just say, well, go ahead and finish my sentence for me. What was I going to say? And it's amazing how they've gotten slower and slower and slower to cut me off. Isn't that interesting? See, when we begin to hold people responsible and say, what was I really going to say? Then all of a sudden they just don't run you over like they used to. But here's the thing. As long as I can stay out of the defense mode, what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to hear what they have to say. But instead, for a long time, that was my default mode, right? How many of us have a default mode? We all do, right? And that's based on our motives. In other words, where did I come from? How was I raised? What were the things? Now, I can't blame things off on that, but a lot of times what we have happen is that we've dealt so much shame in our life, right? We experience so much shame in our life that all of a sudden we're afraid that's usually the number one deal that's going to hit us. So here's the thing. When we go into defense mode, we say things like, it's not my fault. Or how about this one? I don't know. Anybody heard that one? Yeah. And how many times have we done that one? Who did that? I don't know. Whether you know or not, it's instantaneous. Boom. Pops right out. Or here we go. I like, one of my favorite ones is, of course, I'm not sure who did that, but I wasn't there when that happened. Anybody heard that one? Of course we have. So anyway, so let's get the perfect definition of pause from the word. James 1:18 says, he chose to give birth to us by giving us his true word, and we out of creation became his prized possession. Not quite the one I was looking for, but that's okay. At any rate, so we'll come back to that. So a lot of times what we see is in James it tells us to be slow to speak. That's actually the one I was looking for. To be slow to speak and quick to what? To listen. See, that is the perfect definition of how to pause. But a lot of times what we end up doing is picking up an offense. Man, offenses are so easy to pick up because they're laying around everywhere. It's just easy to pick up somebody else's issue. That's what picking up an offense is. It's not just the fact that I'm offended and I'm going to go ahead and pick up the offense that I feel like you offended my friend. That's the dumbest one, right? I've seen more people leave situations, especially in a sober living environment, where one person gets a little crawl going on up under their, a little spur under their saddle, and then it starts growing, and it's growing, it's growing. Next thing you know, 3 or 4 people are leaving over somebody else's offense. That just never made sense to me. But that is what happens a lot of times. So that if we continue to pick up an offense, sooner or later we probably will pick up a drink. Because it tells us very clearly that the number one offender, oh, cool. So it says, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. There we go. That's the best picture you could take today. Anyway, so if we continue, like I say, if we pick up an offense all the time, what does that turn into? A resentment. And a resentment is what? It will kill you faster than anything else. So here's the thing. There are times we pick up an offense that was never intended to offend us. In other words, I'm looking for an offense so strong I'm so scared what someone may say to me that I start picking up an offense even before they didn't even mean it. They were just talking, and I took it the wrong way. I mean, do you really think that people sit around at a table and actually conspire on how they're going to offend you? I mean, think about that. Did you know the truth of that? Is you're not that important. Really not. So here's the thing. But there are people who believe that, right? Because what happens? Well, we start letting that committee. You know the committee I'm talking about. That one that sits up there in the head sometimes. And the one that says that everyone is against you, right? Sounds like paranoia to me. Which, of course, if it's, it's paranoia until it's real, correct? So, anyway. But here's the thing. Why do we retaliate against people? Why is it that we don't pause? Simple. It's fear. It's fear, man. It comes into, why else? Think about this. If I'm coming up and I'm going to say something to you, why in the world would you not just listen? Think about that for a second. But if I come up to you and I say, hey, Dave, it's one of those things that, I don't know, it just seems like you don't really take care of your car like you could, right? Or I think I used to get this one, hey, man, did you miss a meal today? Do I look like I did? But they're joking, but what do? What does that mean? What you trying to say? And I have to realize that people really, a lot of times, don't mean anything by it. But I had for years so much fear in me that the first thing I did is I was like, you know what? They're coming against me. What's the opposite of fear? Faith. So the more I have that fear down deep, let me explain something to you. Think about it this way. If you keep having that stuff come up, then you need to look at it. That's a good thing. Because if it's coming up, it means, hey, I'm doing something. I've got a reaction towards people I shouldn't have. And so maybe I need to say, okay, Lord, what should I do with that? Help me out with that, Papa. You show me how to get rid of this because I don't want to be offended because you didn't create me to be that. You created me to be more. So I'm not going to continue to live under that fear anymore. So the first thing that happens is somebody says something, and then what do? We, as they say, we act out. No, the truth is you act a fool. And you've already said something, you've reacted, you've threatened, you've done whatever, and it just went bam, came right out, right? And then what do? We got to turn around and justify our behavior. Is that not funny? It's like I'm wrong. Why not just say, hey, you know what? I'm wrong. I for some reason, I got offended by what you said, and I just overreacted. I apologize. But most of us don't do that. We say things like, you know what? They deserve that. They deserve me going off on them because look at the way they talk to me. I'm not going to put up with that, right? And then we try to get real cool with it. We try to turn it into recovery, right? It's my code of recovery. It's like, I got boundaries now. Okay, but obviously you don't because boundaries are also made for us. They're not just made for the other person. They're made for you to keep you from acting stupid. But you say, I'm not going to let anybody talk to me like that. Or here's my favorite one. It's the principle of the thing. What? I hate that. And y'all know why. Because what did principle ever do for you? Did it pay your mortgage? Did it pay your rent? Well, I quit that job because this is the principle of the thing. Well, that's great until your bank account goes dry. Listen, If you want to quit something, you want to let something go, and you feel like the Lord's told you to move, or it's time and Papa says, hey, look, I want to take you to another place, great, do it in proper order. But don't just react. Don't be stupid. Don't just walk off a job. That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But yet people do it all the time. I had a friend that told me he had 3 people walk off just a couple weeks ago. Sorry. But at any rate, thank you. Truth is that we're just not perfect. We're not perfect human beings. And it's actually very normal for us to want to fight back. That really is it. You get in my face, I'm getting back in your face. That's the natural flow of things. You know what? I used to read that one scripture. Y'all know the scripture that says that if you turn one cheek, then turn the other. I was ready to turn both their cheeks, man. You know? And then I was willing to lay hands on them, raise them back from the dead, do it again, right? But, that's a whole nother world. But, I was just full of anger all the time. And so I always wanted to fight back. And the other thing is you get these stupid ideas when we start doing that. And one of mine was I can never apologize because that's weak if you apologize. I think the greatest thing I ever got hold of was when I finally understood what it really meant when they sat there and said, if I'm not the cause, right? If I'm not the cause of the problem, there is no solution. Because how many people can we control? Me. And so my job, your job, is when we get in that place, why is it so easy? Because we're easier to say, God, I don't know why I messed up again, but you show me how not to do that. And things begin to change. But one of the things is, a lot of times we don't even know what we're fighting against. Right? We're literally, swinging at windmills. One of the things that we have to understand is that all that stuff, for me to pick up an offense, that's in me. If somebody comes up to me and says something to me today, I really don't get that offended. There's a few things, but not many. And one of the biggest reasons I don't get offended with that is because I no longer care. And it's not I don't care, it's I don't care what you think. I care more about what Papa God thinks about me. That's more important to me than anything else, right? One of the things I always think about is in sobriety, what's the most important? What do they always tell you? What's the most important thing? Keep what first? Your sobriety first, right? But I got a problem with that. I feel like first thing I want to keep first is God, right? And so the quickest way for me to destroy my relationship with God is real simple. Pick up. It's as simple as that. As soon as I pick up, and it's not because God's telling me to hit the road, it's because I feel so much shame that I don't want to be around Papa God. I just don't want to deal with it. So my first thing that I want to keep first is I want my relationship first. And I go through periods of time, and I'm sure you do too, where your relationship's not as strong as it's been in the past. And it's so easy. That's that moment, do I give up? Or do I grab hold even stronger? And that's the moment that you sit there and you get real honest with yourself. What am I willing to do to keep this relationship? And the first thing I'm willing to do is not pick up an offense. The second thing I'm not willing to do anymore is deny my responsibility. I'm going to take responsibility for when I'm wrong. And you know what's funny? The more you do that, the less effect people have on you. I'm serious. The more people come up and they say, well, you did this. Hey, guess so. I apologize. If I offended you, I apologize. And that's one of the things that we have to realize, that God gave us the ability to take that moment and step back. Why? So that we'll sit there and go, oh, well, let me figure this out. No, it's to allow God to step in front and take care of you. Yeah. Isn't that an interesting concept? That God wants to be in front. And I keep trying to get him to move out of the way so I can lead. That's the craziest thing in the world. I was thinking about it the other day when I teach my apprentices on how to saute. One of the things that they do is they have this tendency to want to I got one here that's done that. Flip, 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 flip. And I'm like, dude, will you give the heat some time to catch up? Right? Let's let it cook. Right? And that's what pause is like. It's like we get so wound up, man. It just is confusion. It never works. But when we just leave it there for a minute, we step back. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. And that's literally how doing pause works. God does. He makes it happen. So when we just react to something, when we just like, you offended me or whatever, then the problem is we don't even know if we've actually been attacked. This particular person in my life who does that to me, a lot of times I think, that's not even what I was going to say. That's the frustrating part. And I'm like, fine. I can't fight that. So why get frustrated with it? Why not just give it up and say, and then what you do is you don't have that person in your life as much, right? Because I don't want to offend somebody, and I don't want to walk away frustrated. So a lot of times, God has that as a way of saying, there's some people you need to like minister to, and then there's some people you need friendships with, and there's some people. In other words, there's different places for different things. And a lot of times I think that we forget that, and it's always like, well, I don't know what happened in this relationship. Well, ebb and flows, man. Maybe it's time. It'll come back one day, and that's okay too. But when we just react, one of the greatest things that we have to realize is now we got to make amends at some point. Now, because I acted a fool, I got to go back and I got to act in such a way of going, or I don't, but I want to be able to say, you know what? I apologize. I obviously did this and that offended you and I overreacted. How many times, let me throw this one at you. How many times has somebody said something to you at work? A boss says something at work. And you go home and you're laying there and you're going all through the justification process of why you did this. Y'all know what I'm talking about? And you're over there, and by the time the morning comes, it's like you're going to go ahead and go in and hand in your keys, right? Because it's done deal. They're going to fire you. Remember I did that one time I left the door open. It wasn't just a door. It was at a dealership I worked at. And it was all Porsche, Audis, Lotus, Lamborghinis, right? So it's not the kind of door that you just want to leave open. But I did, so I knew I was fired. Done deal, whatever. I went through the whole thing all night long. I walked in, I thought, you know what? At least I'm going to be honest about it. And I went in and I said, I want you to know I left the side door open. Oh, we were wondering who that was. Man, make sure you lock it up next time. That was it. That was it. And I was almost disappointed because I'd made up my mind. I was going to be all, I'm going to go and tell them I did this. That's what I'm saying. How many times do we sit there and play stuff in our brain over and over and over and over again? Man, I thought I was going to get fired one time, not too long ago, from this one group. And it turned out they didn't even have authority to give me a contract, so it didn't even matter. Isn't that funny? And I was over there worrying all about it, praying about it, and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't make any sense anyways. But sometimes there are times in your life where they will test you. People say things. I had a guy come in. This is part of that situation. Came in, talked to me, and I had some real respect for this guy. And he sat down and he talked to me, and I kind of knew he'd set me up. But I listened to what he had to say. And instead of, and he asked me, this is the question. Chef Paul, what door did you come through? The back door? What door did you come through? I've been in and out of every door in the building. I said, yeah, I think it was the back door. And he goes, nope, it wasn't. It was the front door. Okay. So for a moment I thought, okay, there's something going on here. So I said, obviously I did something. Would you like to tell me what I did? And he did. And it's funny, it was like, nope, actually I didn't do that. What I did was actually worse than what you're telling me I did. And this is so funny. He was so caught up in wanting to, I gotcha, that he kept saying, nope, nope, that's not what you said. And I'm like, dude, I just told you that what I said was worse than what you're telling me. And I told him, I said, it's worse than what you said. So you know what? I apologize. I was wrong, and I apologize. And the whole thing was like this rehearsed speech. It was a setup, 100%. Because he goes into this, that, and the other, and I'm like, where'd that even come from? But what it made me do, what I started to realize was how much more power I had by not going off in that situation. Because he blamed me for some stuff that wasn't true. And I was just like, if I offended you, man. I just kept going back. If I offended you, I apologize. I'm sorry. And what a difference that makes when we just look at people and go, I apologize. But here's the thing. I want to look at a bigger, much better example I can give you. Let's look at the way Jesus handled that. So let's look at John 8, 1 through 5. So we're getting there. So what's happened is he's starting to develop and get all these different. He's got disciples. Y'all know he had more than 12 disciples, right? We know there's at least 72 that followed him pretty much of the time. So when he did that, what they began to do is the Pharisees of the day, they wanted to set him up. They wanted to set him up to fail. So they were going to test him. Somebody pull up on their phones or something. Pull up John 8. Not everybody jump at once. John 8, 1 through 5. Anybody got it? Yeah, Jesus returned Mount of Olives. But early the next morning, he was back again at the temple. Now, Jesus is teaching in the temple things that didn't necessarily line up with the way that the people in the temple at the time believed. It says, a crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and he taught them. Okay? As he was speaking, the teachers of the religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. Ain't nothing like shaming people in front of a crowd. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? Now, what is he going to say? Think about that for a minute. Because if he says yes, they're going to stone the woman. If he says no, then he's saying, so you don't believe in the law. Well, at the time he did, the law had not been, he had come, but he hadn't died. So the law was still in force. So whatever he says is a setup, right? But I love this. It keeps going on. And so John 8, 6 and 7 says, they were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. Now, there's a lot of different things that people think that he wrote. Some people say he wrote the 12 commandments. Some people say he wrote names. Some people say he wrote sins. Doesn't matter. But it says they kept demanding an answer. Tell us now. So he stood up again and said, all right. But let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. Now remember, he's been down on her writing. Now if this woman's been caught in adultery, and some versions basically make her to be maybe a little more than just someone caught one time in adultery. She may have been a woman of the evening type thing. Maybe he was writing the names of people that were standing there who had visited her. I don't know. Or maybe he was just writing out their sins. That's what I tend to think he did. But at the end of the deal, he looks at me and he says, If you've never sinned, throw the first stone. Well, you know what that's equivalent of to me? If you've never sinned, then you have the right to talk about other people. But none of us have never sinned. So the accusers they were forced to pause. And they were actually forced to take a look at themselves. So let's look at John 8 through 11. Then he stooped down again, wrote in the dust. Here's my question. Has he answered them yet? No. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, "Where are your accusers?" Man, isn't this awesome? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I. Go and sin no more." Not only did he not fall for the trap, but he turned around and extended grace instead of shame. That's what they were doing, right? They brought her out in front of a crowd. They were trying to shame her. And he turns around and does what? Flips the whole script and turns around and shows her mercy. Wow. See, that right there is true pause. So he paused, he wrote, and he questioned. There's a lot of lesson in that. But sometimes we can get just caught up in life. That's true. Y'all know what I mean? There's a lot of things. Sometimes we get so caught up in life that we have to learn to pause. Big book on page 87 tells us, as we go through the day, we pause. When agitated or doubtful, by the way, this is what they mean when they say you can always start your day whenever you want to, right? Any other time of the day. And ask for the right thought or action, we consistently remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times a day, "Thy will be done." Remember what I was saying? A form of prayer and a form of pause. Your will, not mine, be done. Isn't that amazing? So a lot of times we can get so caught up in how fast life goes. You ever feel like, God, literally, I can remember starting a business years and years ago. And it always felt, the only way I could describe it is like I'd wake up every day. And the first thing, I get a song. I don't know, God always lays a song in my heart for some reason, or somebody does, whatever. And there's this old song, "Get Up and Do It Again," right? And that's literally what I would hear every morning. Get up and do it again. And somebody said, "Man, how you're working all the time." I'm like, "Yeah, it's like I'm grabbing hold of the tail of a tiger and trying to pull up so I can get on top of them and tackle them." That's how it felt all the time. And finally, I just about collapsed, right? I mean, it was so crazy. At one point, I did 48 days without leaving the office. 48 days. My wife had to bring the kids to me so I could see them. Because I literally was just working all the time. By the way, if you're that controlled by work, if you feel that need, then something's wrong. And you learn that the hard way. But when it gets that crazy, then what I have to do is start getting back into meditation and prayer. Those are good ones for me. Or maybe you get caught up in others. You know what I mean? Like I get so caught up in everybody else's business that I'm not taking care of my own. And I need to pause and step out of that. Or maybe you get so caught up in sin that you need to pause. Well, I'm going to stop that tomorrow. I'm going to do it this time, but never again. How about we just pause and say, right now, just right now, I don't want to do that anymore in my life. And it's amazing how God honors that. You guys can come up. Here's the biggest thing though. Before we act on these defects of character, then we have to learn to pause. And that's what the 6 step's all about. And what does the sixth step say? We're entirely, entirely. You know what I read that is? I'm so tired that I'm entirely ready to let that go. Ready to have God remove these defects of character. And so, and this is a setup, I'll tell you that up front. How many people in here have worked the sixth step? Wow. All right, you know I got over 4 decades in this program, right? Sober. I ain't never worked a sixth step. Never worked a seventh step, ever. Why? Because they work you. You see, that defect of character comes up and it's like, I don't want to do that. Or better yet, oh my gosh, can't believe I did that again. And after a couple of times of that, it gets to you about halfway through and go, I'm doing it again. And finally, God removes it in such a way that it's like, man, I don't even think about that anymore. That's how that step works you. But you see, what's really happening is Holy Spirit's in the process. He's working you too, in a good way. And he's like, you don't really want to do this again. And he's right. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to stop. Well, guess what stop starts with? It starts by learning how to pause. And that's what we do.
Amen, y'all. Let's stand and sing once more tonight. And higher than the mountains that I face, and stronger than the power of the grave, and constant in the trial and the change, this one thing remains. Oh, this one thing remains. Your love never fails and never gives up. It never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up. It never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up. It never runs out on me. Your love. And on and on and on and on it goes. Yes, it overwhelms and satisfies my soul. Knowing I'll never ever have to be afraid. This one thing remains. Yes, this one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love. Oh, and in death, in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. And my death is pain. There's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love, it's your love, it's your love. Oh, your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love.
So, Jeff, who is the only one that can help us pause?
Our Father,
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day. Forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us away from temptation. Deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power